Conscient Podcast, episode 68, season 3. I'm at the number 9 Gardens. Now, my friend Andrew will tell me exactly where we are in a minute, but let's start by listening to this space. I won't tell you what it is right away. So, Andrew Davies, where are we?
So we're here at number 9 Gardens. It's a 40-acre teaching facility located near the Rideau Lakes, about 30 minutes north of Kingston.
But the actual space we're in is what?
The actual space we're in is a authentic Mongolian yurt. And we've got 2 of these on site, and we rent them out to people as an agro-tourism business that provides funding for our charity.
Right. Well, I stayed in one last night with my wife, and I really enjoyed it. And so the soundscape here is there are horsehairs, rope that are holding it together along with different pieces of wood, and it's a fascinating piece of architecture that has a sound, you know?
Absolutely. Well, as you know, the Mongolians travel with these, and so they're made to actually all fold up and then be put back on horseback and moved to the next spot. So it's an amazing piece of architecture. It's very efficient, and all the materials are natural.
Well, this podcast is about art and the ecological crisis, and I've wanted to talk to you for a while. And this season I'm not doing the long interviews like I did in season 2, but rather moments, and then maybe we'll talk again about other things. But I encourage people to go to the website of Number 9 Art and Environment and look at all of your work, including the gardens here. And to stay here, I think, is a wonderful experience because it's an arts space. You can tell us not so much about that, though I encourage people to read about it, but I'd like to know, what is your relationship to this space, and why is it important to you, and what are your your emotional attachment to it?
Sure. So this property was owned by my family. It was a family farm, and my wife and I, 3 years ago, had an opportunity to purchase it. So 57 acres. It's got wetland. The southern border has a creek, the Morton Creek, which is actually more like a river that connects Lower Beverly Lake to the Rideau waterways. We have a forest on the west side, and so it's very secluded, very quiet and peaceful, and it's been used as a hay field for the last 30 years, so it's completely organic in that sense. And when we purchased the land, we had been doing a lot of work with education in classrooms. For 15 years, we've been teaching how to build sustainable communities using our 9 pillars. That's where our name comes from. And we found that the students were really excited about using design strategy to solve the issues of climate change. It's really how we live that has the impact. Our lifestyle is what creates our footprint. And so when we started thinking about that, we thought, wouldn't it be great to have an educational land facility where people could come and actually experience real hand and stay on the property and learn how to grow food from seed, we have a welcome center and a kitchen now, and so they're learning how to cook with that food, and then also trying living in different types of off-the-grid structures like these yurts.
And the connection to arts and environment is pretty obvious because you're what I consider walking your talk, looking at integrating arts practice, but also culinary practices and a sort of holistic way of life, right? So,
yeah, it's definitely a holistic art project. I mean, in some ways, I see the entire Number 9 Gardens as an art project in the sense that it's about building community, it's about creativity, it's about food and culinary experiences. And we had a kind of precedent that we did in the ravine system in Toronto called Eco Art Festival, in which we took over a space for the summer and there was music, and there was art installations and art tours and clay making, and kids could make art projects on their own that spoke to environmental issues. And so this is kind of inspired by that, and it will be on a more permanent and a larger scale.
Well, I was telling you yesterday is that I think it sets not so much it sets a precedent, but it's also a model for others to look at. You know, the idea of taking land and making it accessible to the public for a cultural purpose. And you're also interested in reconciliation. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Absolutely. I mean, today we're actually hosting an Indigenous social, and we have a partnership with the Office of Indigenous Initiatives at Queen's University. And we're actually making soup from our Three Sisters garden. So Three Sisters is corn, squash, and beans. And so we've made a soup, and we're having Indigenous community come out and non-Indigenous community, and we'll be having food, and we'll be giving thanks to the land, and we'll be having drumming and singing. And so it's really, we're very serious about how we create a space for dialogue and learning from each other. We think we have a huge amount to learn about sustainability from the Indigenous community, and it's something we can work together and move forward on.
And what's your longer-term view then of this space? I mean, you're obviously very attached to it. You didn't grow up here, but there's family roots. And so what's the longer-term view? I mean, one day you will pass, you know, hopefully it will go on for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, what was probably the best experience we had this summer is we had 5 interns, 4 from Queen's University and 1 from McGill. And these are students that studied in the book about sustainable local agriculture, but had not had a lot of practical hands-on experience. And so they started in May putting seeds in our greenhouse, and we've now, since then, delivered over a ton of organic produce to local food banks. And so they basically were part of that experience, and they saw how a seed can turn into all of this amazing nutritious food for people in need. And I think it really sets a precedent for them that doing small things can actually have a huge impact. And we're very grassroots. I would love to see the next generation take over this space. Mm-hmm. And, my kids are quite interested and involved, and they're talking about doing a music festival, and they're organizing that all on their own. So I think the transformation of knowledge is really important. That's what we can do is from our generation to the next generation is try and help prepare them for the impacts of climate change. But it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. It's quite nice. We enjoy being here. We're amongst community. We're learning from each other. We're, installing yurts and listening to music and going for walks on the land. It's really beautiful.
And with a relatively low footprint, all things considered.
Absolutely.
Because and we will end with, if somebody's listening and has a chunk of land somewhere and was thinking of doing something similar, what would be your advice on how to start,
Just start.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have all the grand plans, and we have like phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, but it doesn't really matter where you get to. It's just start doing it, and I think you'll really enjoy the results. Just planting a simple seed and getting a garden going, having people come out and volunteer and work with you, and celebrating the food and eating the food is really spectacular. So it's not a huge undertaking. Just start and let it grow naturally.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you, Andrew, for having us this weekend, my wife and I, and for doing this project and all the work you've done over more than 20 years on art and environment. You're a trailblazer, and maybe not as well known as you should be for all of the work and the impact you've had in children, who are, some of them are grown up now and out there with that knowledge that you shared with them years ago and today and future forward. So thank you. And we'll end just by listening a bit more to this yurt. Now, yurts aren't necessarily living things, but it depends on your worldview,
Well, a lot of people do see them as living things, and they do need a constant kind of tweaking and managing. Similar, I would say, to a sailboat almost. They're in that way they're very living and breathing, and you have to tighten ropes and do things like that. But it's really a beautiful structure.